Today, we're going to be talking about how wide receivers can watch and study film. So, the first thing I want to talk about is how wide receivers can prepare themselves by picking different press releases by the defensive coverages that they see from DBs on film. So, we talk a lot about this, like as receivers, we need to have a pre-snap plan, right? We see a defensive coverage off the line of scrimmage. We have a plan going in my head. We execute the plan, and then we get up into my route in terms of a press release or how you structure your route, right? But that's not something that you think of during the game. That's not something where you walk up to the line of scrimmage. You go, okay, let me choose from 10 to 12 different releases that I just have in my head and I'm ready to roll. You got to have a plan ahead of time. And that comes from film study. So what you should do as a wide receiver when watching film, we're going to show multiple examples of this. We're going to show actual full defensive coverages from an aerial view and talk about how receivers can read coverages. But this is the first thing I want to talk about is that you need to understand the top coverages from a DB perspective. So let's say you're a wide receiver and let's say you're the X wide receiver. You're always lined up on the left. That's the side that you always stay on just for the sake of the example. And the DB that's always going to be lined up on you, let's say you have 4 to 5 games of film on that guy. You should be taking tallies and charting down how many times this DB comes out in outside shade press, how many times he's in head up press, how many times he's in inside shade press. So you can prepare yourself and come up with different, not necessarily come up with different releases, but no releases that you would like to use versus this coverage, right? So if I have outside shade press, I know that if he's right up on the line of scrimmage, it's not a bunch of distance from me, it's not a bunch of space for me, what I can do is something called a wide step, whereas you take this outside foot, you jab to the outside, and that helps you take that inside release, right? Because he's right up on the line. We don't have to close any space. We can just attack, take the inside release, and get up into my route. That is planned, you guys. It is almost like a reaction. You know that this DB likes to come out with this stuff. You know that he likes to play outside shade press, especially when a wide receiver has a cut down split. Maybe you're out of the slot and all they ever do is play outside shade press. You need to have a plan for that. You should tally down and mark, okay, he does outside shade press here, 2, 3, 4, 5, and just make tallies so you know what to prepare for, right? Now, again, there's just a simple release that you could do, just a quick one step. And now some of you guys might not know, well, what are 5, 6 releases that I like? That really varies based on everybody, but you need to have releases prepared for different coverage looks. So you need to be prepared for outside shade press, head up press, inside shade press, inside shade catch technique, head up catch, and outside shade catch. What is catch technique? And that is this example that we're showing right here. So in that last example, that wide receiver ran, what was the route, right? He ran like this deep out route versus outside shade press. So he attacked this DB's leverage. He took the inside release and got separation at the top of the route, right? Now, what if we have to run that exact same route versus a coverage look that's similar? We have a DB who's lined up outside shade, but he's about 2 to 3 yards away. So how can I use film study to help me pick a press release, or what type of press release? How do I essentially prepare for a live game scenario like this? Now, before we get into this, you guys, in this press release that this receiver uses, if you're a wide receiver and you would like to train with myself and my staff of coaches this offseason, we are going to be coming out to 10 more states across the country for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camps. So check out that very first link in the description below, you guys, if you would like to sign up and get some more information. We are going to be coming out to Dallas, Nashville, Chicago, Buffalo, Atlanta, Houston, Philly, Detroit, Boise, and Los Angeles. So guys, if you're local to one of those cities, would like to train with us, again, very first link in that description below. I myself will be there along with my staff, working with you for 2 whole days, you guys. So check out that very first link in the description below if you are interested. Let's get back to this video. So now, again, you guys, remember, we're taking tallies of the way he plays me, whether he's pressed up, whether he's 2 to 3 off, whether he's 5 to 6 off, whatever the case may be. I want to be prepared for the defensive press coverage, man coverage looks, zone coverage looks that a defense is going to throw at me, and I want to structure my releases accordingly. So let's say it's common that he plays outside shade press. Then let's say it's also common that he plays outside shade catch, where he's 2 to 3 yards off. A release that I could use, again, we don't want to do just a quick wide step because there's too much space. Maybe I close the space with him, then do a wide step, right? Again, guys, keep your releases simple. Make sure they look the same, but you should have 5 to 6 different releases off the bat based on the coverage looks that this DB gives you. Right? You don't need to prepare, and again, guys, it has to do with the timing of your play concepts in your offense. It has to do with the routes that you are running. But guys, it's not complicated. We post a lot of videos on releases, on routes, on different moves you could use, and it can be a lot if you're trying to remember all of that. You want 5 to 6 things that you're comfortable with. You could play fast. You know that those are moves that you have repped out and worked on. And you want to structure those based on how you choose those is based on the defensive backs coverage looks, the common coverage looks that they will see. Okay. Okay, so now that's what I want to talk about in terms of press and studying film. Now let's talk a little bit about zone coverage. So we're going to be talking from this wide receiver at the top of the screen perspective. Okay, so guys, one thing with receivers, you don't necessarily need to worry about a blitz. You don't necessarily need to worry about maybe the box unless you're a slot wide receiver, right? What you're trying to worry about is the secondary, right? So in terms of the secondary, you want to know what a defense's top coverages are. You want to know how the guy who is lined up on you likes to play. So you could create like some type of release bag, right? Like I got 5 different releases that are going to work against the 5 different coverage looks that he gives me. However you want to structure it. Maybe he only plays you 2 ways. So you have 5 releases that could work against those 2 types of press coverage situations. So when you see it on the field, bam, we can react. But what happens when it is zone? So you got to know their top coverages. Now, this specific coverage is cover 2. But if a team likes to run a lot of cover 3, a lot of cover 4, a lot of maybe, let's say, cover 1, whatever the case is, you need to know, okay, against this type of zone coverage, I need to run my route like this. Against this type of zone, I'm running my routes like this. And you should do that for every single play that you guys have called. So if a team likes to run a lot of cover 2, right? Cover 2 is essentially where the corners are going to sit in the flats. What you'll see as an outside wide receiver is you'll see it's DB, who's maybe like outside shade press. His goal is to get hands and reroute you inside. You will see a safety who is lined up very wide outside the hash, and his goal is to play the deep half of the field. We're also going to talk about this from a slot perspective in a second. But if you know that team likes to play a lot of cover 2, and let's say you run a lot of fade balls, you know that when you see that press coverage look, when you're running that fade, you're not going to put your head down and go run for forever because you're not going to outrun a cover 2 DB. There's a weak point in cover 2, which is where the corners sit in the flats, safety's got the deep half. They call this the hole shot, right? It's the hole shot in this zone right here. So if you have to run a fade ball, you know that you're going to settle in the hole shot. Let's say, for example, you run a lot of like inside like box corners or whatever, and you see his cover 2 look, expect the quarterback to throw the ball on a line. Don't expect that ball with a ton of air, because he won't do that if there's a safety deep over the top. So you have to know these coverage looks to know how you structure your routes and know where to sit in specific zone coverages, right? Now let's talk about it from a slot perspective. Let's say you see that that's a cover 2 defense. See a corner who's pressed up. See like a linebacker's inside shade looking at the quarterback. You see a safety who's very wide, almost like head up with us, right? So what we would like to run a lot of is like corners. Maybe you like to run a lot of posts because over the middle is another weak point in cover 2. So you're automatically thinking, okay, when I'm running this corner, I know I could be getting the ball from the quarterback on a line. If I'm running this post route, I know that there's nobody over there. So maybe I give him a good move like a rocker step at the top of the break and run that post. So that's how you can prepare, right, guys? You have to know their top coverages. And you should tally it just like how you see press from the DB. When you see man-to-man coverage, let's say they run a lot of cover 1. You're focused on how you can beat press. Let's say you're running a lot of zone coverage. You see a lot of 4. You see a lot of 2. You see whatever. You should go through every route that you have to run and go and take mental reps. It does not take anything physical, but you're thinking, okay, I'm running my route like this versus this coverage. So when you see it in a game, it's not a foreign concept. You never want to be unprepared, you guys. You never want to be that guy that comes up to the line, panics, and then what he does is he just takes off and goes and runs. You never want to be in that situation. Being unprepared is probably worse than not being as skilled as the guy who's lined up across from you. You have to be prepared. Now, other things that I recommend making sure that you know on film is that, like, if you run a lot of slant routes, you run a lot of dig routes, you want to be prepared for if you get an uncomfortable situation, right? So this is an example of we got inside shade press coverage. Maybe not so much press. He's maybe about like a yard and a half off, right? But I would let's consider it press. Call it inside shade man coverage, right? But I would consider it press. So we have inside shade press. We have to run a slant route, right? So we should be prepared for this situation. We don't want to be that guy that I come up to the line and I panic if I have to run a lot of inside breaking routes and I'm seeing a lot of inside shade press. So what's a release you could use? You could use something called a diamond release, which is where you attack this DB's outside shoulder and hip for 3 hard steps. You're trying to self-fade to get him to open up. Sometimes you have to be comfortable with the uncomfortable things. So that's his first step off the ball. Second, third, puts the brakes on because he sold fade, because he ran hard, hips and shoulders were committed to the fade. That got that DB to open up. You have to know how to run your routes versus the difficult coverage looks. Now let's look at the second example here. This is DK Metcalf. He's running a dig route, and he has an inside shade press coverage guide. This is something that he has already gone over in his head through film study, you guys. All great wide receivers do this. Like, it's not, let's walk up to the game. Like, that's, again, why 7-on-7 can sometimes do a little bit more harm than good in terms of receivers, in terms of, like, pre-snap stuff, because, like, you don't have any film to prepare on. You don't know who you're playing against. offense, it takes you maybe a couple drives, maybe a couple reps to get comfortable with how the DB plays. So you come up to the line of scrimmage and you know this DB loves to play inside shade. Let's say a big part of your offense is digs, post, inside breaking routes, right? You know when a DB's lined up inside shade, you're not going to be able to get the inside release. If you force the inside release, this DB's going to get hands, he'll keep his leverage, and he will reroute you to the inside. So you know, okay, I'm going to attack him inside and take what he gives me with the outside release so I could stay on the path of my route, right? So I could stay on the path of my route. When you run a dig, it looks like this, like what I just drew on the screen. It does not look like this, with this big-ass inside stem where you're getting rerouted way to the inside. So you have to stay on the path of your route. That's for spacing purposes, guys. If you run this dig over here that I drew, and let's say your slot receiver's also running a dig, you're going to run into him, and one defender could guard two routes, and that's horrendous route running. So you have to keep what the DB gives you. So you know this. You know, okay, I'm going to attack him inside. I'm going to take what he gives me to the outside so I can ultimately play fast. You guys can't waste time getting rerouted, fighting the hands, fighting a DB's leverage, forcing an inside release. So guys, like I said, it all comes from film study. You know a team likes to play a lot of inside shade press? I am prepared to beat that inside shade press with every single route that I get. If I got to run a slant, I could use that diamond release. If I got to run that dig, I'm going to attack him inside and take an outside release. And again, the outside breaking routes are easy. I got to run a fade. I'm going to attack him inside and take the fade. So you guys have to be prepared. Understand that, again, we're looking for the top coverages and we're looking for the top press man leverage and distances that the DB will use against us. So this is a great example from DK Metcalf taking an outside release on a 12-yard dig route.